update the last bit of code. Hopefully nothing breaks. So yeah, let's see. Yeah, so what is creative coding? Well, when I think of creating coding, I think of, in the professional worlds, there are two categories. Mainly you have designers and then you have developers. And merging the two, you get this little intersection right here. And these are all the titles that I've come up with or I've seen professionally. Like digital artist, new media artist, graphics programmer. So basically, it's a way. This category is people who work with design and programming. Yeah. And this is a pretty much a big overview of the work that I've done since 2013. So yeah, over the past 7 years. And I'll start going into these in a bit more detail. But I first wanted to say that it started off with I wouldn't say passion, but like with video games. Not only did I do video games, but I figured out a way that you can host video game servers. So I hosted my own private servers, and because it was on my computer, I was able to modify and create my own hacks for the game. So I can do things like fly through walls and teleport, make it so that you don't lose health or anything. Yeah, and this started off when I was in high school. Also in high school, I took a elective called Digital Arts. In that program, that's how I learned how to use the Adobe products. So like Photoshop, Illustrator, and also I don't think you guys know about this now, but there's a program called Adobe Flash, which was a software that lets you build animations, and then you can like even put it to the web. So I did some stick figure animations and even built some websites in Flash. And after I graduated, I went to SDSU, still merged my love of video games with what I did for a hobby, which was like this art stuff, digital art. So I made some friends playing Super Smash Brothers, and we created this kind of like hangout get together. Created some logos and some posters and signatures for forums. And this was also how I got into learning After Effects. We started recording our video matches and putting them on YouTube, and I made this YouTube intro, just doing some tutorials online and putting my own twist on it. And then after I took a break before attending CU Denver, I really struggled with learning computer science, which was what I majored in before at SDSU. I ended up dropping out, and so I kind of decided that, okay, if computer science isn't for me, then what is? It took me a while, but I came to the conclusion that maybe I should aim for what I was doing in high school, which was digital art. So I spent 2 years going to community college, getting my GPA up, and I got accepted to CU Denver. During that period, I also created this for fun. And what it was just another way to use all of my skills. Before, there was an Adobe product called Edge Animate, and with that, it made it easy to create websites so you didn't have to do too much code. So I created this. I drew Ash, like all the sprites for Ash, and had him walking around. And drew the Snorlax and edited the background and pulled that together. This is the debug interface to show you like which position you are on the tile. And I eventually wanted to turn this into like a web-based Pokemon game, but yeah, this is as far as I got. Never got any further. And then I just started at CU Denver. And at CU Denver, I learned I felt like I had a good grasp of what digital art was. So every project I always aimed to like try to do something that I haven't done before or learn a new skill set and push it in a new direction. So I did things like creating motion graphics, concepted interfaces. This one was a fun project with the interface because I learned about After Effects and expressions, and that was a way to use code to drive your animations programmatically. So for example, like this HUD, you see had this kind of perspective, but it was really tied to a null object that kind of like positions all the things together. Same with that, I don't know what we should call it. This thing right here, that is all tied to an expression, so all I had to do was just drag a slider and it would automatically animate the miles per hour and the numbers and everything.
Are expressions, is that Python or JavaScript, and it's like
It's-
tiny little snippets of code, right?
It's JavaScript, so what you can do is you can add your own math and tie it to different properties of After Effects effects. So for example, you can tie all your math to a slider, and so all you have to do is just drag a slider and then it'll, manipulate all your animations. I'll have another example further on later. We can get into it. Also did 3D work, and as well as, more After Effects-y type animations. And this led me to my second portfolio. I didn't have my first portfolio because somehow I lost it. But this is what my first portfolio looked like. I made this in 2015, so my sophomore, starting junior year of college. So we go inside the portfolio. Here's the overview menu if you could see all the work, but we'll start with here. This work was from my very first internship that I took at CU Denver. And I was pretty much, I guess you consider it a digital designer. They asked me to take their logo and make it look better, so I made this. This was their old website, and they said, can you design something to make it look better? So I designed this, but it turns out it was a bit too much. So this was my boss. She runs the organization as well as a couple other organizations. But we finally landed on this as a website, and this was built with Adobe Muse. Again, it was another Adobe product which was no longer exists, but it was a way to create websites without having to learn how to code. So really just draw shapes and import pictures. You don't have to think about it too much. So that was my first internship. Oops, no, it's too far ahead. Let me go back. Load this again. Yeah, and also had some artwork on there. So I took all of the stuff that I've been doing for my classes. I took a photography class at CU Denver, put some of those pictures in there. Also put some of my high school artworks and projects in it. This is an example. So that was that. Let's go to the next project. And after that internship, I took a second internship because the first one was actually unpaid. So I was trying to find another internship that would actually offer compensation. And I found one at a real estate company, and there I was a digital designer. I didn't design this. I used this as inspiration, but this is what I did design. They bought a car and they wanted to add their advertisement branding on the car as a vinyl car wrap. So I designed the car wrap in Illustrator. These are just a couple more sections. And it was cool actually seeing it get printed out in, the real deal. Besides that, I also, for the company, created advertisements, web banners, different brochures. And it was okay, but I got introduced to making email campaigns, and they had a contract freelance developer from San Diego who was apparently charging them $100 an hour. And I thought that, wow, that was so much. And you can work remotely and use code and not be in the office and do that. So I wanted to get into making websites. So that's how so I used this portfolio, created this portfolio to look for another internship getting websites. Even have a contact section over here. Let's see the view. Yeah, even has my resume on there. This was my first branded resume. Yeah, and I got an internship at a company making websites, mainly in the outdoor industry. And we did a lot of WordPress and Shopify websites, so I learned how to make, work with e-commerce platforms, and also got educated on the outdoor industry as well. I wasn't into fishing during this time, so it was kind of strange making content for stuff that I wasn't into. But now I've been doing fishing more often. I've been maybe about 20 times already now since then. Pretty cool. So then, yeah. So I was doing school and doing internships, but I didn't feel like I had an artistic outlet to express myself. So then eventually I got approached by a student who graduated. He's probably like 5 years older than me, maybe 10. Timmy Edens. I think you know Timmy Edens.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
He's in LA now, right?
well, I don't know. He keeps moving all the time. Timmy Edens, he I consider him a VJ. He makes content for like festivals, music festivals, and whatnot. He asked me to make or he approached me with an opportunity if I wanted to make some content for the rave called Decadence here in Colorado, which was in 2017. And I said, yeah, sure. And I used that as a way to learn more After Effects skills, mainly the trap code plugin. So I came up with these different effects, also did a lot of tutorials, and I made all of these animations in about a week. But luckily it was over winter break, so I didn't have to stress too much. I was just playing around with that. But because of that, it perked my interest because I saw a lot of videos of using event graphics like that, but putting it onto surfaces with projectors. So I bought this controller, this MPC controller. I bought a projector, and I started learning how to do projection mapping on my own. This right here was my first gallery exhibition at the Manual Gallery. I saw an opening, and because I was already messing around, I felt like I saw a call to artists to like apply. So I applied and I got accepted, and I got to showcase this work at the Manual Gallery. I also moved this and showcased it at a meetup called the Denver Creative Tech Meetup. And later that guy showcasing at the meetup got me a job in the future, which I'll talk about later on. This right here was a school project, but it wasn't initially a school project. I was still doing artwork and projection mapping, but I wanted to add a spin to it. I think the initial ask was create a live events graphic, and I kind of argued with my professor. It was Molly. I don't know if you know Molly Rolfe. She taught like for a semester there, and I took her class. But I convinced her, and she allowed me to create and expand and make like an actual live performance graphics. So I created this in like 30-degree weather over the course of one night. I used Illustrator and traced this. This is in the Rhino district where all the art murals are. And I used my projector. I had two of them. So at the second time, so after the first gallery, I bought a second projector, and I layered those images on top of each other, mainly because just using one projector was too dim. So using two projectors and lining up the content made it much brighter. But then I used some of my web knowledge and created an interface that you can play on your phone, and all you have to do is connect to the Wi-Fi, and then use your phone to control the animations of the projector. So that I had different effects. So one was like pulsing, one was to change the color, another one was like the amount of strobe, like this effect. That was really fun. I thought it was really creative. Also, I saw another call to artists. I studied abroad I recommend studying abroad if you have the opportunity to. I studied abroad in Denmark, and after Denmark, I was inspired by the Nordic culture and kind of created this helmet, like a Vikings helmet type thing. But I also wanted to projection map it. But I also like the idea of using interactivity with the projection mapping. And sometime in October, I saw another call to artists for Redline. And I applied and got accepted there. And I created this installation where you could use 4 different iPads. They use WebSockets, and they use a library called P5.js, which is very similar to processing. And processing is pretty much a graphics programming language. It's a way to use code to create shapes and whatnot. So I didn't have too much complex interfacey stuff. It was just, a red side and a blue side. But I used the iPads to talk to a software called Resolume. And Resolume, this software right here, is how you can map images very easily. So the protocol for talking from the iPad to the software was called OSC. So I used OSC data to say, oh, go to this software and target this layer and change this value.
So they're very familiar with P5. That's kind of what
oh, cool.
I've taught the whole class in.
All right, I'll have to explain it to you guys. I'll show you more later on. But
and you guys, if you have any questions or while you're looking at this stuff, feel free to. Is it okay if they interrupt?
Yeah, go for it. Just feel free to interrupt. I don't know if there's like a raise hand feature. If not, I probably won't be able to see it.
And I'll also watch the chat, so we see wow as one comment.
Okay.
But you can put questions there, and I'll bring them up.
Yeah. So after Redline, I still had this giant helmet sitting there. It sat there for maybe a good couple months, but I saw another opportunity for showcasing this at the Next Stage Gallery in the I forgot what that district area is. It's by
Denver
the
Theater District.
Denver Theater District, yeah, over there. So I showcased this there. I think it was the first projection mapping installation there, and then Bryan, you showcased there shortly after as well. I think you did like a VR piece where you can touch a plant and it controls things in VR. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that gallery was basically the chancellor got money somehow, and they're like, do VR, do AR. They didn't ask, does anyone do AR or VR?
Yeah.
At our school, but we had the money and the funding and the gallery space. We started finding like interesting projects. Like mine, I felt like was exhibited way too long. We didn't have enough, but I thought yours was amazing. It's very cool.
Thanks. We'll go on to the next one. And so that kind of led me to my senior thesis. Bryan announced that the school just got these HTC headsets. And at the time, I think HTC just released it like probably the year or 2 years before. And so it's still really new. And when he announced that, I immediately wanted to start using that technology. So rather than coming up with a thesis, more it was an excuse to start using it and try to play with it. But I did land on the idea of creating a video game with it. And I had to add a sense of design to it as well. But I was interested in learning how to expand these VR headsets experience, because usually when you wear VR, you're just limited to like your individual space. You can't really communicate with people outside. So I thought maybe if you use your phones or something. The school had these extra iPads, so I developed on that. But what I did was I found out a way by using WebSockets to use the iPad to talk to the VR headset. So people can play on the iPad and fly as this airplane guy, and then the person in the VR headset is in the middle and shoots the enemies, and they're both working together to shoot enemies. So the VR headset person can see the plane flying around, and then the plane person can see the guy in the headset. And that was really cool to see. These people were elementary school students. There was like a busload of them that came in. I showcased my thesis before presenting the final thing at what was called RACIS. I think it's called Research and Science.
Research and Creative Activity Symposium.
Yeah.
And it's also, in fact, a lot of you all I know are freshmen, and they have Europe grants and RACIS. And you can get funding, like even a couple $1,000s for various projects. And the one deal is you have to exhibit and show it. And so You would not believe the reaction of these kids when they saw this, because like you said, the vibe was pretty new. And
Yeah,
so that there was just like this massive crowd of kids like all day long trying to get to play this game. It was really cool.
yeah. And even one kid was saying like, do I do this for a living? Or he told me even if I started to sell it, he would pay money, but he doesn't have any money because he's broke, kind of thing. But it was a really good feeling just to hear, just such excitement and see that from them. It made me want to continue down that path further and try to figure out how to make a career out of it. Not quite there yet, but I think I'm getting closer. So after my thesis, this was my third portfolio that I created. And in it was a way to pretty much show off now like more simplified design. Added this cool, reactive element to it. And as you notice, this element, if you saw my website, is kind of similar to that timeline effect. So I just wanted to, well, I'll get into that in more detail later, but this is what happens when you go into a project. You can see a recap video that I produced of it. This was a really trendy web effect, how the image stays still but the rest of the page scrolls. So I added that in there. I made sure to add a lot of my process so you could see, just how this was the mobile app controlling the projector and how that functioned. This was all done with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Here is just more testing, just to see the one-to-one. I'm using WebSockets to talk from this page to this page, and then I took this animation that was traced and exported it as an SVG, and then used JavaScript to target every single shape, and then animate it differently based on the sliders. And then I took this as a canvas and projected it back onto the surface, which was here. So this was that software called Resolume, which makes projection mapping easy. So I streamed in that website, used Resolume, and then outputted it and projected on that surface. So these are the two projections down here. I set up a table and used Michelle Carpenter's, she's a professor, digital design professor, her like expensive camera to record all that. So that was nice of her to lend that to me. And then, I shared it on Facebook, and especially the Rhino Art District Facebook. And that was quite surprising because it said it had 17,000 views on it. So that was really cool, like being able to have that impact. And then
So that's like a black rooster,
uh,
and then
it
projectors projecting it.
in the daytime it had some color on it. I think it was more brown and orange. This is at night, so now all you see is the light shining through.
So people walking or nearby, you
Yeah,
could
yeah,
get the phone and start making it move. Oh, that's really
yeah,
cool.
yeah. I mean,
Great shot.
I didn't make a final project of that. It was more just a test demo, so only I could test it. But it was a few passerbys just walked down this alley and they just blew their minds seeing this stuff. So it was kind of cool. They said like even if they saw this at a music festival, they would pay me money to see this. So I thought that was kind of interesting to see. I don't want to get into all the projects. I just wanted to show you how the design of this site was. Even had an about section over here. In the about section, I just kept it very simple. Added some social media links over here. And so that was my third version of my portfolio. And then after I graduated, the dean of the, I guess he's the dean of all of digital art or digital design.
College of Art and Media.
College of Art Media. Yeah, he
Yeah.
asked me to, because he saw my work in the gallery and was impressed. But the dean asked me to create another installation for the Biennials of America Music Festival, because the music program had a study abroad trip to Cuba, and they wanted some way to showcase that experience, and they wanted to use a student to, showcase that in the festival. So I used that as an opportunity to create this kind of a music installation. Um, I muted the sound because I thought it would have been distracting, but there's a subwoofer down here, and you use this as a MIDI controller. So you press a button, and then when it cues up, it'll start playing a loop, and then you can play different instruments, and you pretty much can orchestrate a band. And then if you click on the leaf, it'll open up a page, and that page has descriptions of the faculty, the instructors, and whatnot. And this project took about a month to complete. I had complete creative freedom in terms of like design and content for it, as long as it just showcased everything, and I just kept showing them, and they said, "Oh yeah, that's cool." The school spent $5,000 for this touchscreen television, and it's not really a touchscreen television. It's a regular television, but they use this IR infrared sensor bar, and it can detect where your fingers touch on the television, and that's how you like trigger touch events essentially. So that was a really cool opportunity. And then the other half of the budget, so the budget was $10,000. The other half went to me just to pay me for the month. Yeah, so that was my first freelance project out of school. So yeah, I recommend doing good work, and eventually people will notice and ask for your work in the future. And because I showcase at art galleries, a project manager from Club Vinyl here in Denver reached out to me and asked me to help create some art installations for a New Year's party that they were gonna have. This was in 2017 for New Year's. And I worked with two other artists, and we came up with the idea of creating a lot of LED installations. I've never worked with any LED lights before, so over here I bought some Arduinos and some LED strips, and then started playing around with that. And then the other artist said like, "Oh, what if we put some cotton over it and make it look like a rainbow cloud?" So over here is me experimenting, animating different colors with the LED strips. Once I got a prototype working, I scaled it up massively with the budget that we had, and I used all that to buy probably 200 LED strips because it had to fill this entire room. This room was like 30 feet by 30 feet. So that was a lot of content. So just trying to figure out all the engineering, the wiring for that, making sure I had the right power supply to power all these. Again, I used this software Resolum to map all the content, but that was a really cool experience. And not only that, it was on multiple floors of the club. So this was the top floor, over here was the bottom floor. Also created the LED lights for these chandeliers that hung from the ceiling. We also had, there's 3 LED strips going down here, 16 or 15 feet long. So 6 strips total for two rows. But it was really cool because I got to not only create the animations and whatnot, but I got to VJ on stage. So like, you know how they do the New Year's countdown, I was the one controlling the lights on stage for that. So that was really cool. Also, I got like my friends in for free because they gave us free tickets for working there.
So I have a question, because whenever I've done something like this with people around, I'm super paranoid about glitches or things happening.
Yeah.
Do you have
I did come
plans for that, or?
Well, I just gotta hope for the best at that point.
Nothing's ever happened, but I'm just always terrified that everything's going to crash.
Yeah, it did kind of crash, but not too. It was still manageable. Mainly because over here at the top stage, there was all these Wi-Fi routers blocking my signals to talk to the LED strips. So I used this controller to control the animations, but there was a lot of glitchiness and a lot of lag, so it wasn't a smooth animation. It kind of like staggered. But I guess people didn't really notice, but it was kind of annoying to do that. So I think in the future, if I was to do this again, it was just research into better hardware, and so that there's no interference going on.
Yeah, I also can't tell you, I mean, it seems like this happens frequently, but Denver Art Museum, I used a touch table like you had there, and they turned the power off at night.
Yeah.
So the plan was the computer just runs constantly, but where they plugged it into the circuit, the guy leaves at 5 p.m. and he like went and shuts off a circuit.
Uh,
And he did that opening night, and they didn't
yeah,
know. It's like, oh my God.
yeah. Well, I'll get further. But yeah, just to add to that point, I learned from my work at Hovercraft, which will be in the next few slides, was to always have a fail safe. If the power goes out, you got to go into the BIOS and set it so that the computer will automatically start once you plug it back in. So if there was a blackout and your computer shuts down, it'll automatically start back up. And then also you got to run some start scripts. So then you say, when your computer turns on, open up all these softwares and then open up full screen and then let it run. So it just turns on automatically. It's a good, useful technique. I haven't used it too much, but.
Well, this looks amazing. Looks very cool.
And then, so after that project, still looking for work as a freelancer. Eventually, I found a Slack channel and called the Creative Devs Slack channel. I recommend that, especially for you guys if you want to look for work or just more interested in creative tech work. But in that Slack channel, there's a jobs section called, well, it's not called anything, but I saw a posting for someone looking for a skill set of using WebSockets and has a sense of design and can animate with the web. So I applied for that job and got the contract. And I began creating this web application, which was pretty much an auction live bidding platform where you can have these services and you bid on different prizes running on Amazon Web Services. I was just mostly focused on the animation, so it's like the more fun side of it. And here is a prototype of the final product. Even made this logo. This was the most fun animating that I had. I made this guy reactive to your mouse. He looks around and whatnot. And then I also continued to create this form as well to sign in. But about 6 months into the project, I quit. And I guess because of me quitting, this project never launched. So if you log in, the page is broken. So I guess the whole project just got canceled or something. But the reason I quit was because I went to join this company called Hovercraft. And I was able to join this company because my very first gallery exhibition, you know, the one with the like splashes of colors, the projection mapping, I showcased that at a meetup, and the organizer of that meetup, his name was Justin Gitlin, and I asked if I could present at that, and eventually I did, and I kept in touch with them. So then by the time I graduated, I've been showing him my portfolio, just saying like, hey, check this out, you know, this is what I've been doing, in hopes that he would like lead me to work in the future. Eventually he did, and this opportunity came up, and he invited me to work as a Java developer, creating installations. And how that happened was because another company called Legwork, they are more focused on creating animations and websites. Their creative director changed focus to do more Nike installation work. So he created the Hovercraft Denver branch, and I was pretty much the first employee working at Hovercraft here in Denver. And when I started, there was just 4 people in the office. It was me, my boss, a project manager, and Justin, who was he was the freelance developer. And then in the Portland team was the design team. So they're the people who came up with all the graphics and content for the displays. So for example, they would come up with that iPad interface, or just lay out storyboards, and then they hand it over to the Denver team to animate those boards, or where I came in was I also sometimes programmed. And because of that, it was a cool opportunity. I got to go to all the Nike's flagship stores. This one right here was their newest store that opened about a few years ago in New York. So I got flown to New York to do that. This one right here was the Jordan's store, Michael Jordan store in Los Angeles. This one I didn't really code. I just made sure to solder the controllers. So I used my Arduino skills. I soldered the controllers and hooked it up to the PC and the PC ran Justin's code. The content was designed by the Portland teams, so I was more of the guy to plug everything in, solder, make sure it all worked. Over here, we had some LED animations that was filmed for an Instagram advertisement. A couple of my animations made it in the final spot, but I was mainly the initial prototyper of animations. In that process, I also used Unity to help me concept the ideas to put like a physical box and whatnot. Over here was also in the Nike store. I worked mainly for these thermal cameras. Thermal cameras were like $2,000, but you use four of them, and I wrote software for that to like detect you, and we put like this fake interface on top of it. And yeah, this is an iPad this is all fake, but the interface was fake, but the LED lights and triggers and whatnot was all done on the web using WebSockets to talk to that. And then,
so this is Hovercraft. They did all of Nike's digital content, right? In North America?
not all of them. So I learned that Nike contracts out a lot of different agencies to specialize in it. There's quite a few hovercraft type, experience LED type companies, and usually those companies they're not. So Hovercraft didn't do all of it. We worked with a lot of other companies as well. So there's a company to install the LED screens. There was a company here to put all this foil. There's another company to add all these cool tech-looking fabrications and whatnot.
Okay. Cool.
So it's usually just trying to work together, making sure everyone's all on the same page. Hovercraft did sometimes come up with Nike campaigns. That was the direction we're heading in. Also to like get on the global level. So what we focused on was working on the stores in North America, but we were trying to branch out to get the stores in Japan and Europe and whatnot. So this is what a project brief would look like. I don't think this was made by Nike, but Nike also makes their own project briefs. I think we got this from another vendor who said like, okay, so we want to make content for this area, the T-Mobile arena, and here's all the specs for the screens and whatnot. And then the brand team in Portland will come up with designs, and they'll like storyboard it out. So they say you start with the logo, and the logo grows, and you have all these graphics that slide in. But even the brand team doesn't always create all the designs. Sometimes they use designs made by other companies. So these designs were made by another company called I Love Dust. They have a really cool Instagram page. You should check that out if you can. But so what the designers in Hovercraft did was just lay out their designs to make sense so it fits nicely in these screens. And then this was all sent to me, and then I was the person to take all those assets and animate it on the screen. And I came up with a way like, well, they gave us this brief. How about we also, instead of just sending them files, we like comp them into the mock-up so they have a better sense of what it would look like. Animation-wise, this was the most time-consuming, most animation work I've done in the shortest amount of time. I finished this campaign in about 2 weeks. I started off with 2 people, and then a few days in, it was just me. And it wasn't just this screen. It was all the screens in the whole stadium. Also, there's screens for inside the rooms where the players' lounge is, as well as advertisements on the outside of the building. And all of those had different contents and different screen sizes, so I had to like redo all the animations but change it differently. And also when we started to display the basketball players' names, I had to do all 24 people, make them have their own animations. So that was it was a lot to do in that one little time. Like that's when I started to burn out at that point. But I got it over and pulled it off, so that was really cool. Going more into process, so these are more Nike projects. Just an example of using my animation design work and then laying it out on top of Nike's mock-ups to get that. And then here's like the real world translation to that in the stores. So in the stores, I still think the Nike stores are the coolest looking retail stores, like the highest end. They're the people who probably spend the most money in making all this fancy environments. So it was really fun to work with and pull off. A lot of hard work, a lot of late hours. I averaged about, if not 40, around 50 hours a week. Sometimes I had to work weekends. Like they say, oh, the screen is off, because they have other contractors working. So I had to be on call up in midnight, making those late night changes because, the time zone difference. Other ones were I worked straight shifts till 9 in the morning and then got an hour of sleep and then started over again. This was when I was in New York. So it's not for everyone. You have to be sure you want to make what you want out of it.
Well, it sounds like the pace at an ad agency. So
yeah, it's really fast.
Typically, though, you get paid well, I hope, and get time off, like when everything's done.
No, I'd say paid decently. For the amount of work, yeah, it's just decent pay. I guess the reason being is because now you could say I've done all this cool Nike work. So now when you take this Nike work and you go to other places, you'll be more hireable. So that's where the low pay kind of justifies its cost. I started off getting paid 60 grand, and had like a 5% increase from that. But that was because I was hired as a developer, but transitioned as animator. There was a junior animator there who started off at 50 grand. So I'd say starting off out of school, you could expect around 50 grand. If you know more coding skills, then you can get more. Yeah, and then after that, so yeah, you're talking about After Effects expressions. So I made this design tool for After Effects because Nike designed their own grid system, like a designed grid system, and it was just very tedious animating the grid manually. So I created using expressions to generate a composition in After Effects. So now all you have to do was just drag sliders around and then it creates the animation for you rather than having to go in frame by frame and whatnot. So I made this as a tool for my coworkers so that we could all get our work done faster. Because in the agency world, speed is really important, as well as quality. Like you have to work fast, but it also has to look amazing. So if you can come up with tools to make that process faster, then it's just all the better. Also did this as a way to hopefully get a higher raise because they see I'm working extra. And, never happened though, so it's kind of a bummer.
I think it would have happened eventually, but I think
yeah, would have probably.
COVID.
And then I made this tool also as a prototype. So this is like the semi-final version of a prototype. I think I could show this because this is not an actual Nike store, but it was going to be something like Nike related on the Nike campus. But before you saw how I had those After Effects animations and then rendered out and it was just flat. But I saw a lot of 3D models on the server just sitting there. And I said how about we can add some interactivity so we could showcase our work but add an interactive element. So I used Unity. And with Unity, you can export your content to the web. So essentially, this is exported to a website, and you can now use pretty much Unity on the web. So I created these template animation, created a control system where you can look with different views of the space, and even simulate augmented reality on your phone. So that's a really cool effect to play with. So I thought it would have been useful in the future. You can even move around, pan around, doesn't have to be limited to that. Yeah, and then my boss showcased it to Nike and they were really impressed and wanted to use it in future projects. Yeah, so recently I've been also talking to other agencies and they see this being more of a model to showcase work to clients before actually building out the work and wasting money. So I'd say it's a good skill set to learn if you want to go that route. Also on the side, I made some artwork on the side. There's this thing called Codevember. I guess it is November, but 2 years ago, what it is you create artwork with code for every single day of November. So pretty much every single day, I made at least one sketch. And after I made the sketch, I brought it into After Effects, and that's how I get such vibrant colors, because I did a lot of post-processing, as well as like helping it stitch so it can loop together better. So I kind of cheated that effect. So when it loops, it kind of just fades and blends into the beginning of the frame. But yeah, doing this, I'd recommend it if you want to get deeper into creative coding, because it helped me vastly improve my programming knowledge, because I was just, essentially making art, but I had to learn programming to create these cool effects. So that was a lot of fun. Very stressful though, but I was lucky. I was able to do this because during that month, I didn't have much work. I was the only coworker in the office, and my other coworkers were out in New York. So I was just sitting there most of the time, just making these. And then also, I still participated in exhibiting work in galleries. So this one was at the Denver Art Museum. My friend Michael Sperandeo approached me with this opportunity to work with the Denver Art Museum because he was a untitled resident, and he was giving the opportunity to make a video game, essentially. Any kind of concept, he landed on a video game and using AR. So he created all the 3D content and the story, a little bit of design work, and then I focused on animating the interface and just programming it all together and getting it running. This was built in Unity, and we put it on the App Store. It got about 200 downloads or so, so that was pretty cool. This was at Redline. I wanted to explore more of these merging of different technologies. This is an iPad right here. Underneath the iPad is an Arduino, and with that Arduino, it has these it's controlling LED lights that's taped on the underside of the iPad. Also with that Arduino, it is using a heartbeat sensor. So you could place your thumb on it and it measures your heartbeat. So I used that data and I sent it back to P5.js, which is what the iPad is running. And it's like, pretty much drawing out your heartbeat. And also map that data to a subwoofer underneath so you can hear the pulse of your heartbeat underneath. And then I also wanted to learn, at the time it was new, but Unity's visual effect graph. So this projection right here was made in Unity. I'm just projecting the Unity's output, whatnot. And I'm using a combination of WebSockets and OSC data to talk to the different softwares and hardwares. Yeah, and that was an interesting project. About last year, I think it was last year, I got approached by David Moak. He is a director at the Denver Theater District, to add my projection mapping on the clock tower in downtown. So I got to do that, and that was a really fun experiment. When I approached these projects, I always try to find a way to learn a new skill. So the new skill in this one was Houdini. But I didn't end up using Houdini. Houdini is a visual effects software that you can create 3D content programmatically. It's more for like simulation. So you can simulate smoke, fire, cloth tearing, and all that. But I used it to simulate snow because it was in winter time, so I wanted it to look like snow was falling and landing on the windows. But yeah, the quality didn't turn out as good as I thought, so I switched and just used After Effects for this project. And also just doing freelance work. This one was made for a friend. She wanted to start a music label called Concert Junkie, and she wanted me to make some Instagram social advertisements, so I made this animation for her. But yeah, at this time I did get laid off from Hovercraft because of like COVID issues, mainly because Nike was saying that they no longer had plans to create interactive installations for their retail stores. So because of that, being on the interactive team, I was cut because we didn't pretty much get any more projects. So yeah, I pivoted. So that was this April. So I spent the next 2 months putting all of my work into this fancy website in hopes that I can find more work in the future. So this is like a recap video of the site. I believe someone was asking me how I made this timeline yearly effect, and that was really, it's just a lot of math and stretching the width of the lines based on the position of your mouse. And I had like invisible points on that timeline, so you can't see it, but like if your mouse hovers on that element, then it says, oh, you're on this date, so then animate all the content this way, or so it was a really fun process. And someone was also asking about this reflection. I believe a 3D major was asking me about that. And that was done with a library called 3JS. Basically, 3JS is a way to create 3D content for the web. It's a library that you can just import your objects, add materials to them. In the documentation, you could they have some really fancy documentation where you can just search the word and has a whole bunch of example files. So I was searching for the effect of reflections. So if you search the word reflections in 3JS, you'll find that effect on there. I did add a twist where I put a little vignette gradient, so it kind of fades off to get this effect on it. The original idea was actually more complicated than what you see, because it was originally all black, and I had my content emitting light and then refracting off the ground, so it looks all glowy. But that was too intensive for regular computers because I had like a fancy gaming laptop computer. Also had some water effects where you move your mouse and then you could see your water ripples on the floor, but that was too intensive for especially for phones. It couldn't handle it. So I just ditched that idea and just kept it simple.
Hey, what coding environment are you using? Is it JavaScript and using like an online editor or using offline text editors?
I guess I'll just say JavaScript. And I kind of made up my own framework in terms of mashing all these different techniques together. So to break it down, I run a Node server, and the Node, actually no, I forget. I'm using Webpack, and Webpack compiles all my code, mashes it down so it's small so that the page can load faster. It's very technical. I don't know if you guys will just fly over it if I try to explain it.
I kind of forced them to. We did a week of a couple different things, and 1 week was getting Atom and Node to run to start up a server and get make a React project. So they're familiar with the words. I can't say or I even understand totally how it all works.
For me, I found React very difficult to understand because it has all these weird gotchas and tricks to know about it. A more simpler framework I found that was more intuitive was Vue.js. That's what I made my portfolio out of school with, because it just helped me organize my code better.
It's Vue.
Vue.js, yeah. It's not as popular as React. I'd say learn React if you want to get into more corporate environments. Otherwise, just use Vue if it's like small scale. But now I'm not even using like a JavaScript framework. I just code straight into JavaScript, and then sometimes it'll get to the point where my code gets too huge, and then I gotta condense it down, and then now I have to start thinking about how would I make my own framework to make this more optimized. And this is essentially, I'm talking about this whole presentation. So I didn't use any frameworks. It's just all in one HTML file. I did start getting some freelance work. I reached out to a company here called Consume and Create, where William Johnson is. One of the guys from Legwork left to join Consume and Create. He was the web developer there. And I saw them post a web developer position. I applied, but I told him that I didn't want to work full time. I just wanted to be a freelance. He said, yeah, sure, that could work. And yeah, so I worked on this website. Most of it was already done. I was just showing you how it looks. What I focused on mostly was creating these top two modules. Was this one making it responsive, and as well as this. This was kind of fun. I used a lot of math to figure out how to get these to work. You can also swipe if you want, or just use these buttons to go to the next one. Yeah, and so you know how I was talking about the low pay aspect, but using that as a sacrifice to get paid more in the future. So this project, I did it for about a week, but I made $3,000 in 1 week for this project. And all I had to do was just code these two things. So now I'm starting to charge people $75 an hour, which is a lot, but now it makes more sense because I am not constantly working all the time. So even though that's a lot, it's just a lot for a short burst. So I'm trying to get it at a point where I have a lot of people that I work with. And then, so I have constant work that I have something to do every single day. So ever since I got laid off, it was just a constant grind of nonstop working, even though I wasn't getting paid. It was either working on my portfolio, applying for jobs, or, working on projects to help me get jobs. I did get asked to do a talk, which was similar to this. So I spent another 2 weeks making that in Unreal Engine. I chose Unreal Engine because I've never made anything in Unreal Engine before, and I just said, okay, well, how about I challenge myself? So I made that presentation in Unreal Engine. I thought it was way overkill. Unreal Engine is a video game engine, and it was just way too much. So the second time around where Bryan asked me to give this talk, I just said, okay, I'll just put everything on the website. So that maybe in the future, when I have an interview, I could just show them this whole presentation again, rather than just talk about my work. I can have like this interactive slideshow to showcase it. And this was the most recent freelance project I've done. Again, this was using P5.js. So initially the company asked me they sent me some designs of this like gradient effect, right? And they wanted me to animate it in After Effects and then export it to the web. And I thought, well, this is something you could easily do with P5.js. So I kind of steered the direction to do it in P5. And I made this interface. So this interface is not part of the final project, nor is this. There's, some text on top of it and some call to actions. But I was just mainly focused on this graphic that's used as a background element. But I created this interface because I noticed that I had to work with two companies. One was a design company, the other was a develop website company. So I made this as the interface to talk to both the developers and the designers. So the designers can come in here and change the color palette, edit some things like, number of lines. We can increase that or decrease it. So it's just, none. Increase the strokes so the lines are thicker. The speed, change the speed, go fast. Let's see, smoothness, add more detail to it. But what I learned was eventually, so to back up, when you create all these parameters, it does affect this output. And I made this so that I could say, all right, designers, just copy this code and send it to the developers. And then I told the developers, just take this code and paste it where I commented for them to paste it. So it's just, an easy one-step process, so I can just hand it off and they don't have to talk to me. But there was an issue, which was that this did not run very fast on slow computers or older computers. So I just went back and redid the whole animation and recreated it in After Effects. So it wasn't customizable, but it did look very similar, and then just sent them the file in. I also didn't charge him for that extra hours because that's what they originally asked me to do, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make this instead. So
Could you code it in such a way that it falls back to the video, or would there be any reason to do that?
Maybe. I handed it off to them last weekend, but I haven't heard back, so I have no idea. So now they have two versions. They have this web version, and they also have a After Effects JSON. The plugin is called Body Movin', also Lottie. Basically, you can export your After Effects file into SVGs and whatnot for the web as a JSON file. So that library just converts your JSON into what you would have seen in After Effects. Yeah, that's what I don't know if in the beginning of the presentations you saw those circles, like that chart. That was done with that same library. It was an After Effects animation, and I just exported it. And then also recently, I just wrapped up this video game, working with my friend Michael and another friend, Ryan Buxton. Ryan Buxton is a computer science major. Maybe some of you guys know him. And then Michael Sperandeo, he's a 3D major, also at CU Denver. So I'm working with CU Denver people. It's just, I guess age doesn't matter as long as you're good. But Michael got accepted to be a resident for the Denver Art Museum, and he wanted to expand on the video game we did for the first time, that AR game. He wanted to elaborate on this. So we made this video game in about 2 months, and in that 2 months, he focused on design, or he focused on 3D content and story. I focused on designing the interfaces and programming it, and then Ryan Buxton, the computer scientist, focused on creating the back-end databases, because we had an email server, but also because the game expanded from not only from your app from the App Store, but to websites. So you click the link on the game and it opens up a web page. So we're setting up the web pages. And then I went in to add my interfaces on the pages. But essentially, the reason why we did that is you play the game, and if you pay more attention to the game, you'll see that you can open up these web pages and get clues. And essentially, it'll lead you down a trail throughout all of Colorado. And if you can solve all the clues, you'll get a prize at the end. So it's like a real-world treasure hunt video game, essentially. So that was a lot of work. I think we kind of burnt ourselves out on that one. All of us got to the point where we were just extremely drained. But it's there. There's always a lot we can improve, and it has still some glitches and whatnot, but for the most part it works. And yeah, so going through questions, just looking up.
Oh, thank you for the talk. That was great. Really amazing work.
One of them was, let's see, I think some of these I've already answered through the presentation, but one of them was, what do I look for in recent graduates? I'm not looking for anything. I'm not hiring, but I would like to see you guys try your best and like make something really cool. It's always good to see that. Those are the type of people that I like to work with. The overachievers, I'd say. Any specific moment when stuff just started to click? Yeah, I guess it's my moment of realizing when I moved here to Colorado was figuring out what I was passionate about. So that's why I had such intense focus when going into the design program, because I kind of already knew that I wanted to do design. So now it's a matter of pushing myself further. And then let's see, how long did it take to get coding? I don't know. I guess everyone learns at a different pace. I like taking things slow, but because I take things slow, I'll probably won't get things done. So really how I get things done is put myself under some extreme situations or deadlines, like submitting things to art galleries. So now you say you have 2 weeks to finish this, and then sure you could finish it, but now everyone, like hundreds of people, are going to see it. So now you have to try your best to make it as good as you can. That's how I really got myself to get pushed to learn so fast. Let's see, scroll bar, yeah. And someone was also making a multiplayer game and got it, and they're looking for a free backend hosting service. I don't really know, to be honest. Maybe Heroku, but that's a little complicated. But there is a lot of tutorials to get that set up. But hosting can be pretty cheap if you look in the right places, like DigitalOcean. You just pay $5 a month. Yeah. I don't know if anyone else has any other questions, but I think that's it.
There has to be some questions.
I do have a question.
Sure.
So I see, based off of your portfolio and your work at Hovercraft, it looks like you were obviously pushed into working in fashion and physical retail. Was this something that you were always interested or passionate about, or did you kind of just fall into it?
Yeah. Short answer is no. It got to the point where, well, before at school, I wanted to do the high fashion Nike work because it was the high end, is like the most eyes are on it, most valued thing. But really, I didn't care so much about fashion, let alone Nike. I never owned a pair of Nike until I started working there. And then my boss had told me that I had to get a pair of Nikes, so that when we went to the Nike store, they didn't want me wearing some other brand shoes. So that's how I got into Nike. I prefer Vans. It's just more of my tempo. But yeah, it's not something I was interested in, just fell into. I do like that kind of work, though, because it is pushing you to the limit. I consider not doing that work is just, it's kind of bad to say, but like mediocre work, just to get work, not really work with, the intention of going further or, have some kind of, other motivational purposes behind it.
I think I've heard motion graphics, actually another graduate that had opened a motion graphics firm. He would refer to projects as meals or reels.
Yeah.
So either it's got to pay really well or it's got to look really well.
Yeah.
Look really good. It'll go on my portfolio. So it's got to be one or the other.
Yeah. That's also what I noticed too, is this work does not pay as much and is way less stressful if you were just to go into some kind of corporate type world, like working at a Google or, Twitter or something like that. Sure, I guess programming wise, you would have to be way more advanced. But even just to take things to scale it down, there's a lot of startups here in Denver where you just have to, be a web developer. And it pays way more than what I was making, and it's way easier. So I guess the reason why I did it was to fulfill my sense of pride, I guess. Really. So now I could say I had done that. What's next? So that's where I'm at right now, is I'm trying to figure out where can I fit now. So just exploring opportunities. I have been applying to other companies, but because of the work I've done, I am able to be very picky about what I do. And also I have supported my parents as well. So that helps out a lot.
So I have a question, since you kind of talked about starting off in computer science, and I think we have some computer science majors in here as well. It seems like you just love programming, so I'm curious, why didn't computer science as a degree seem to work for you?
I found the issue was really how it was taught to me. I guess how I received it from my professor was it just blew, everything went way through my head. Like we got into assembly language, and all that. C++ just jumped straight in, and none of it made sense to me. I didn't understand any real use applications. And using creative coding as a medium helped me see that, bridge that gap more easily. Especially when it came to like things like math concepts, it helped me get better at math because now I realized like you need some trigonometry skills to get, things to move how you want them to move based on formulas, or even getting into physics, learning about gravity and how that other forces impact others. So yeah, creative coding for me was just a more, I wish I learned it before rather than, the other way around. Also, I guess I wasn't in the right state of mind. I was young and just really cared more about video games and friends and partying rather than like a career,
I got a question.
Sure.
When you're working on something, do you find like the programming part more satisfying, or the actual results, the output, like the design aspect?
I guess that really depends on the project. I've learned that everything has their ups and downs, so it's always just trying to maintain this like state of equilibrium where you don't like overwork yourself or you feel like you're not doing enough. For me, if it seems kind of boring, like it's too easy or it's just kind of lame, if I have the option to or opportunity, I try to push it to make it more exciting. Sure, it might be challenging and who knows, it might not work out, but as long as I ride that thread of triggering excitement, then yeah, the work, thinking about that in terms of like what's easy or what not, it becomes irrelevant. You just make it because you want to.
So you're describing, I don't know if anyone's heard of this, but the theory of flow.
Yeah.
And I can't pronounce his name. It's an Eastern European name, but he talks about that in terms of games, but anything in particular. You just described it exactly. It's like it can't be too easy because it's considered boring. So the difficulty level has to be a certain amount or you don't want to keep doing it. And so his theory is to work or play, you have to maintain this period of flow where it's like somewhere in between hard and easy and enjoyable. And that's what.
Yeah, I will mention that there can be times where it gets too hard to the point of you. So for example, where I realized that was I applied for Twitter and got an invitation to take a test, a coding test. And wow, that question, they asked me 2 questions, some programming questions, and that was so hard. Also, I waited too long to take the test, and the due date was the day of when I opened it. They gave me a week to finish it. But yeah, it was way too hard, and I just didn't even finish, because it would have taken me. And then I told my friend Buxton, who worked with the video game with, he was a computer science major, and he said, "Oh, all you have to do is just use recursion," So that stuff made more sense to him logically. For me, I need things to be a bit more visual so I can pair things together. That's how I understand things,
So where that sounds like a programming position you're applying for.
Yeah, it was a Twitter apprenticeship. Yeah. I just applied to like pretty much everything that I thought was interesting just to see what sticks. Yeah, I guess ever since graduating, I think I had about 40 interviews. The reason how I got a lot was I just pretty much go through a ton of different job sites every single day, and just keep checking it out and applying a lot. But yeah, even doing so many interviews. So last week I had 5 interviews, one every single day of the week. There's still a high chance of them either not even responding to you or just they might find someone better than me, that's more suited for the position. So that's a real I say that's a very strong reason of why you need to really try hard at all your projects, because it is competitive. You're competing with everyone else who wants to make money as well, and they're going to choose the best one for the job that they offer. So you got to make sure you're better than everyone else, essentially.
I guess since we're generally talking job type things, the other thing I highly recommend for everyone is using your alumni network through LinkedIn. So like Robbie, I'd suggest Crispin Porter. We have like 4 or 5 people who work at Crispin Porter.
Yeah.
And I'm sure
Yeah.
they're
I
looking
saw,
for creative
yeah.
coders.
Yeah, in school, I saw there was they actually had a creative technologist position. I don't think it's there anymore. But at Hovercraft, 2 of the project managers came from Crispin Porter to work at Hovercraft. So I got their take on it. And essentially, it seems like Crispin Porter's work is old school. And I think their business is dying out. And it's like the whole industry is changing. But yeah, COVID hit, so now that maybe Crispin Porter is the better option. But I don't know, I just had an interesting perspective on that.
So I guess any other questions for Robbie? So I think the work you're doing is amazing, and I think it's really cool to see how you're blending design, motion graphics, and coding, like just back and forth so easily. So super cool to see all the work you're up to.
Yeah, thanks.
So last chance for some questions. Otherwise, I don't want to keep Robbie all day.
Yeah, if not, you can always just reach out to me. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, or you just email me. All my contact information is on my website. You can find me on Google. Just Google search Robert Fikes IV, the 4th, if you want to find me there. But yeah, I'm always helpful. I'm also part of the CU Denver's mentorship program. So I'm mentoring 10 other students at school, just giving them like general career advice or whatnot. So yeah, just feel free to reach out if you need help.
Well, thanks so much for coming. We really appreciate it. That's awesome.
Sure.
Very
Thank
cool.
you.
And I owe you a beer or other or something.
It
We
can
need
wait.
to get together.
It can wait. Maybe something electronic.
Yeah.
But,
So, well, thanks a lot for coming. Really
yeah,
appreciate it.
Sure.
And I guess for my class, it's pretty much the class today because it's right before Thanksgiving. Unless people request, like want me to set up rooms for your group project or anything like that. Otherwise, I was going to say, have a good break. Don't work too hard.
Or do you? Yeah, no, try to savor those moments while you can. I'm just in the phase where I realized that these next few years I have to grind really hard before I can start relaxing and easing off and reap the benefits of my hard work.
Well, I was going to say, you really need to pick it up a notch, based on what we just saw. All right. Well, thanks a lot.
Yep. Thank you.
All
See
right.
you guys.